Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the St. Mary's Candidate Forum. Before we get started, I ask you to please turn off the ringer on your cell phone. Thank you. If you will, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. A couple of background and general announcement items. Restrooms, if you go out either of these back two doors, they're off to your right and around the corner. Coffee and water has been provided by our host tonight, Cumberland Inn & Suites. We very much appreciate that. Jim Hilton, publisher and editor of the Tribune and Georgian, and the Get Out the Vote team, a grassroots organization, has been working together since 2014 to organize candidate forums in Kingsland and St. Mary's. The Get Out the Vote team is seeking new members. If you're interested, you can contact us directly through our website at Camden Vote's contact page, and we have a few representatives here who will be glad to answer any of your questions. Next, I'm going to introduce the candidates. Actually, on your ballot, you'll see that you have 8 city council candidates listed on the St. Mary's portion of the general election ballot. These 8 candidates include 2 candidates that are withdrawn from the race. In post 1, Mike Wilson, and in post 3, Billy Holman. Now, I mention that to you because their names do appear on your ballot, whether it's absentee or electronic. And by intent or accident, if you vote for them, obviously your vote is not going to count. So you should see when you go to the polling stations posters to remind you of that. If you need additional reminders, please go to the Camden Vote's website. You'll see more information about that. Anyone want to know where that website is, we've got business cards to give you the address. Am I coming in loud enough back there?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I also want, before I go on to the actual candidates that are here, I want to mention for those of you, there's a small part of St. Mary's that is in District 2, Camden County District 2. The incumbent, Chuck Clark, is running for that seat again. But also there is a write-in candidate by the name of Goff, G-O-F-F. I'm sorry. So I mention that to you because since he is an authorized and official write-in candidate, but you'll see no notice of that unless Mr. Goff provides that information. It's in the newspaper, what have you. The Registrar's Office, Secretary of State, does not provide additional information about his writing candidates. If you want more information about that, you can talk to me later, or once again, go to our website. And that's not an endorsement of Mr. Golf. I just want to make you aware that you do have options that are not necessarily available on the ballot. Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce the candidates for St. Mary's Council. I'll ask them to sit for now and choose to applaud or not, but when I get done with this introduction, I'm going to be inviting Jill Helton here, who will be a moderator for tonight's session. So for post 1, we have Artie Jones and Wiley King. For post 2, we have Mr. Goodman, Jim Goodman, and Lane Porowski. And for post 3, we have Jim Gant. You'll notice there's another sign here, Jay Marino. Jay was invited, or has been invited to this forum, and he declined the invitation. So please join me in welcoming our candidates here tonight. Please join me in welcoming Jill Helton.
really appreciate everybody turning out for us. I know there's a lot of events. It's a very busy month in October, so we appreciate you sharing your time with us, especially for the candidates. So, Reuben and Georgian has been working with the Get Out the Vote team, like Tom said, for several years. As a newspaper, we feel that it's our job to help educate voters, and this is one of the ways we do that. We also are planning to publish a voter's guide in the October 25th edition Tribune and Georgian, so I'd encourage you to check that out as well. And we have additional questions for all the candidates, Kingsland St. Mary's, as well as some of our state federal offices. Let's see. Oh, I can't neglect to mention this beautiful room. I don't know if any of you have been in here since it's been renovated. Cumberland Inn and Suites has never looked so nice. We really wanted to keep this event in St. Mary's, but we're limited on venues that will hold a big crowd and are suitable. And C.B. Yadav and Richard Cutler from Cumberland Inn and Suites came to our rescue. So I'd really appreciate a round of applause for them too. I need to adjust my microphone a little bit. Is that better? All right. Our timers for tonight's program come from the Camden County High School Political Club. This is a new nonprofit political club. These are teen Republicans and young Democrats who are interested in government and politics at the local, state, and national level. They're nonpartisan, like our Get Out the Vote team, and we have Bryson Morrison and Chad Carter to help us. So the format is similar to what we've done in other events that we've hosted. Each candidate will get a 3-minute introduction to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what's important to them. And they'll also respond to a series of questions. I don't know how many we'll get to tonight. Probably not that many, so we'll try to get going on that part of the program as soon as possible. And then following the Q&A portion, we'll have a 3-minute conclusion statement from each of our candidates, just to wrap up if there's anything else they want to mention. Following this forum, hopefully the candidates can stick around for an hour. We're planning another meet and greet. If anybody wants to speak directly to the candidates, I encourage you to stick around afterwards. Okay? All right. Let's get started. We're going to start the introductory statements in alphabetical order and in post order. So, Mr. Jones, would you like to get us started? And we have a microphone for you there.
Whoa. Good evening. I never met a mic that I didn't like. My name is Artie Jones. First of all, let me thank Jill and the Get Out the Vote group, because I think this is great. The last time I ran for office, it was kind of in the Stone Age, and you didn't get out to the people, or didn't get things out to the people unless you went door to door. This way, you get people to come to you. I'd like to applaud all of the candidates, and especially all of those that are in office now, because it takes a special person to hold office. We sit back and we're Monday morning quarterbacks and talk about what would or should or could have been done, but unless you've been in their shoes, you don't know the half of it. So I'd like to applaud all of those that are in office and all of those that take the time to run for this particular office. Well, my name is Artie Jones Jr. I'm been in Camden County all my life, except for a brief tour in the military. I've made a lot of accomplishments as a county commissioner. I served 4 or 5 terms as a county commissioner. I think this will help me in my position as a city council person. I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything there is to know. And believe me, there are a lot of things going on in the city now that is questionable. And there is no quick fix for anything. We'll have to just bear down and work and pray together to make sure that we come up with the final answers. I do have a little bit of business experience. My wife and I started the Child Care Center from ground up. We had to go through all of the process of We had to go through all of the process of putting our business together. And I know what it means to have a payroll for at least 40 people. But it was a successful business. We had over 300 kids, and we never had any kind of complaints. If you believe that, I got some land, I'll say. But I do have a lot of business experience. I know a lot of things that need to be done in order to get a business started. I've been around St. Mary's all my life, and I think I know the temperament of the people. And my best quality is that I listen and I can work with anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. King.
I'm gonna stand up. I enjoy sitting down, but I need to stand up for a few minutes to stretch. I'm Wiley King. I started coming to St. Mary's to visit in 1965. My wife at that time told me she was from St. Mary's. Her parents were here, and she told me she'd never move back to St. Mary's. I tried to buy some land here and talked to her about moving here back in the late 60s. She said, no way. In 1979, she said, I want to move back to St. Mary's. So we moved here in 1979, and I've been here ever since. I went to work for an engineering firm in Jacksonville for a while. 1981, I came to work for the City of St. Mary's and with building and zoning. I did that in 1987. I turned zoning over to somebody else, and I kept the building department in January of 2009. I did assist some of the previous city managers in helping them make decisions in city operations. I was with the city for 28 years. I seem to think I know how the city works and should work and operate. Now, one thing I will say at this point, I was at the city council meeting last night, and I want to congratulate all the council members that were present for that attitude that they took on the drainage contract. I think it was very good and a very good move, a very good decision. One of the problems, speaking of that, one of the problems we do have is drainage. And we need to work with it safely and properly and get it done. But another problem we've got is zoning. The council, present council is working very hard on that, and I understand it, and I appreciate it. But it still needs some things to be done to get it right. It's another thing we need is economic development. We need to bring more businesses in the St. Mary's to help the industry. The homes is not tax laws for the services they get. And I feel like I can be a lot of help with my past experience working with the city, doing things with the city and helping the city. I'm through. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elton, and I really appreciate this opportunity to be here, and thank you all for foregoing your candy run downtown and showing up here and to hear this forum. I have a great deal of appreciation for everybody up here at the dais, and I certainly have an appreciation for all of the people here in the audience. I am Jim Goodman. I am a native of St. Mary's. Was born in 1947 across the river at Fernandina because we didn't have a hospital back then. And I stayed here until I went off to college. And after my 4 years of college, I moved to Macon, Georgia, and made sort of a big round through Georgia and Tennessee, and all the way back around to Florida, and finally ended up
after 40 years or so, retiring and coming back to St. Mary's, and I've been here for the last almost 8 years now. So I'm back home, and I love St. Mary's. It was always my plan to be here. I had to change Mrs. Goodman's in order to come back here because my first wife, Mrs. Plaintiff, said she would never live here. There's something about the water, and it would make your hair frizzy. I don't know if you remember this, if you're a native of this town, but it would really make your hair frizzy. So I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to come and represent myself as a candidate, a viable candidate. My background is in hospital and nursing home administration, an undergraduate degree of psychology, and I have the equivalent of a healthcare administration degree through Charter Medical Corporation in their long-term care division in hospitals. And I've worked for such entities as Vanderbilt University Medical Center. I am a businessman, and I'm serious about fiscal responsibility and conservative values. And I'd like to bring that approach to the council. I would like to be the devil's advocate and always question the results of a decision that would be made. I have some benevolent criticism of some of our recent decisions, and I would like the opportunity to sit on the council and have input into future decisions. And I would like to be your representative in doing that. And thank you for listening.
Thank you all for settling. Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank all of you for coming and spending some time with us this evening. I think it's a great opportunity to go more in depth on some of the issues that are facing St. Mary's. And I am glad that you're here, and I'm glad to thank everyone who took the time to put this together. It's a great asset to the community. I'm going to spend my time more talking about why I decided to run rather than who I am. I think a lot of you know me. If you don't, there's a literature on the back there. You can get some of my background. I am a healthcare professional also. I decided, I thought long and hard about this and really almost waited till the last minute to decide whether I was going to run. You put 4 years in and you do put a lot of time and effort into it, but it was the time and effort that I had put in that I wanted to make sure that what we had done in the last 4 years actually gets implemented. When you're on city council, you have a certain amount of discretionary time, and that is over and above the mandated processes that, or meetings that you have to attend in the mandated functions that your job requires. And I put a lot of my discretionary time into working with the citizens to develop a master plan for St. Mary's. We had a tremendous amount of citizen input, and I really consider the final result a citizens plan for St. Mary's. We interviewed many individuals. We had feedback by way of a survey. We held a lot of open meetings and workshops. And what is in the master plan is reflection of what many individuals within the city want in the various neighborhoods. It was interesting to see that when you talk to people in different neighborhoods, they still had a lot of the same strong desires. They want to see what's good for St. Mary's. They want to see the Midtown area cleaned up. And I just felt by continuing on city council, I can be an advocate for getting the work done now that we have defined what the work is. So I decided that another 4 years would give me an opportunity to encourage the use of the master plan and to help with economic development. I'm willing to do the work, and I'm anxious to do the work, and I always bring as much enthusiasm as possible to whatever I do. And I want to once again thank you all for coming.
Elaine told me to use my left hand or I'd hit her in the head, and I'm not going to do that.
Thank you all for being here. I mean, it's really great to see a crowd that wants to know about their elected officials. And so important in today's world, which really has so many problems in the political field. Now, we're not going to go there, but you know what I'm talking about. Nationwide. I got here 36 years ago as a Navy commander, Civil Engineer Corps, to plan, design, and construct a Navy base. Never thought I'd live here, and of course 36 years later we're still here. I was very fortunate in when I retired out of the Navy that I ran an engineering office in Jacksonville for 17 years. Then I became a project manager over in Panama City Beach, and they need another one right now to do a complete overhaul of the beach. And then the economy went sour, and so that trip was getting old anyway, so I was bored, and I became a politician. I like that. It's hard. It's a hard thing to do. And quite frankly, I've been honored. I've been privileged to be a council member now for almost 7 years. And it takes a lot out of you. You want to do the best you possibly can for all the citizens. And we try to do that. Quite frankly, I didn't really want to run. But I kind of like Elaine. I had so much invested in the last 7 years that I felt it was so important. And what we're missing is good people to step up and be leaders. Good people that have foresight, that understand what's out there as far as the future of St. Mary's, how good St. Mary's, it's great now, but it can be better. With the right leaders, and the right leaders will get some of these problems behind us, and it's just not happening. So I stepped up for another 4 years. I hope you bring me back. I've got a lot of experience. Maybe I can do some good, some additional good, before I go off as MacArthur said, old soldiers just fade away.
All right. So you ready to hear how they answer my questions?
Yeah.
All right. Question. We're gonna reverse the order around a little bit so everybody has a chance to answer first, and rotate around a little bit in the order. So, first question. Many citizens have called for local governments to help bring new businesses and jobs to the area, but they're also sensitive about government not competing with private enterprise. How involved should the city be in economic development, and what's your opinion of the projects currently underway in St. Mary's? And first on deck would be Ms. Kowarski.
Anyone who has heard me speak before understands that I take economic development very seriously. The city can't create jobs, but the city can work towards creating an environment that attracts businesses in here. We have a very unbalanced tax base, which is heavily dependent on citizens. We are far from what is recommended when it comes to the percentage of taxes coming from industry, commerce, and then citizens. So there is a great unbalance. We are making a lot of progress by bringing the Marine Center in, which is going to be very exciting, and we're hoping that is a great economic stimulant. The city, I think, has to set the stage and try to be attractive, try to be as supportive as possible, both to employers who are currently here, but also to new ones who are willing to come in. You have to let them know it's very competitive out there. And there are, almost all the cities are fighting to get more development and more businesses. You need to make them feel welcome. You need to make them feel like they will get a helping hand from you. Many of them expect some types of incentives. We have several structures in place to help with the incentives. And I think we've laid a lot of good groundwork. I don't think the city ever intends to compete against private enterprise. We do want to try to attract new individuals to the community. There's been some discussion of the docks. The docks will be built in phases, and they will only be used for transit boaters. We're hoping we can attract more boaters, new boaters to the community. not ones that have been here a long time. So I see that as just trying to create another area of attraction, and I know that the wharf will also be bringing in additional docks. Right now, the truth of the matter is our boaters are not being served at all. Because of the damage from the hurricanes, they have great inconveniences. It'll be nice to start having some of the things that they are used to having available to them again, especially the dock.
Thank you, Ms. Gorski. Mr. Goodman?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Elton. I believe there's a balance between what the city government should do for business enterprise and what private enterprise should do for itself. And I take slight exception and polite exception to the statement that the city has never interfered with private businesses before. In fact, they have, and Mr. Calvin Lane can address that personally. Mr. David Lane and Mr. Cal Lane can address that personally. And I think it's very, very important for the city not to compete with businesses. The city has deep pockets. Businesses are very, very much profit-driven. It's a tight margin that they operate on. Nobody goes into business wanting to fail. They try to plan, they try to budget, and it's an unknown quantity when you're facing a government that can simply generate more income administratively. I think that market-driven is the best approach. Certainly, the city should offer incentives, but the city should not be competing with businesses, and the city should not be taking advantage of such facets of government operations as eminent domain and the ability to literally seize property and change things to their advantage. So it is a delicate balance. And I think if we let market forces apply, we'll find out what the true calling for St. Mary's is. We may not be what we've been envisioned to be. We may simply be a bedroom community. We should be comfortable with that. If that's the natural order of things, if that's the way we're supposed to go, let's accept that. And let's keep the charm of St. Mary's intact in that regard. Let's be open to development for areas other than the downtown area. Look at the midtown area, look at some of the outlying areas, and be willing to be innovative and creative and to put into place the things that will generate a business interest for someone to come into this town and say, yes, I'm willing to commit and I'm willing to invest because I see the potential with the college and the technical school coming on board for a work-ready force that is truly geared up to meet some of the modern demands. Thank you.
Mr. Goodman? Thank you, Mr. Goodman. How involved should the city be in economic development, and what's your opinion of the projects currently underway in St. Mary's?
Well, I think economic development is crucial to the future of St. Mary's, and you can't just sit back and wait for developers to come in. You have to offer the kind of infrastructure and incentives that's going to bring people in here with good economic development, with good jobs. I think about the rezoning of the mill site. That allowed the JDA to get a developer in here that looks like that's going to go. It's going to be a great catalyst for downtown growth, but it took incentives. It took us to rezone the property. It's going to happen in different places. I know that the airport is another place that I hope that we're going to be able to attract a really good developer. We got all that land out there now, and that's in Midtown. Midtown is hurt. There's no doubt about it. And so that airport property is key to the future of development in that area so that the Midtown can thrive again. I know that there'll be probably another question about the Intercoastal Gateway Committee, so that's coming, the Intercoastal Gateway. There's no way that we can sit back and just let that property go private. We have to control it. It's key to the future of the downtown. When you think about the waterfront, it's so small that if you don't have the right development on that property, you could destroy what we love about St. Mary's. What is it? What's the role of the government? The role is to facilitate development, good development, to the best that they can. We can't take over private, but we have to take jewels like the Intercoastal Gateway, and we have to try to get the right developer there. That will be the catalyst for future development in St. Mary's. St. Mary's lacks vitality. Where are you going to get that vitality from that development, and what will spin off of that development? We don't know what that is yet, but the government definitely has a role to play in economic development. You can't just leave it to the private sector. Not anymore. There's too much competition out there.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Mr. Payne, question to you.
I hate these things. I don't like these mics. But again, like everybody says, economic development is very important to the city of St. Mary's. We need it bad. And I will work towards trying to improve what we've done. One of the things we need to do is look at the restrictions we put on existing businesses and maybe reduce them, and then also give incentives for new businesses to come to town. We need it for our tax base, nothing else. It's very important, and that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Mr. Jones?
I think on this subject, I totally agree with Wiley and some of the things that he said. We need to rein in government overreach. We spend too much time letting certain officials dictate to the businesses how and what they should do. In other words, when I started my first business in 1996, everything went well. You know, I got along with the planning and zoning board. The permits and everything worked like they're supposed to. Back in 2006, when we started our second daycare center, it was like herding cats. You know, when we talked with these inspectors and these people that are supposed to be helping us, it was total chaos. There's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. Don't just tell me this isn't right. If I'm a business person and I'm spending my money to try to get certain things done, tell me what's wrong, what do I need to do to make it right? And that's been the role of the city for quite a while now. We need to hold the governmental officials accountable to making sure that these businesses feel comfortable in coming in. We need to reduce some of the fees and things for small businesses. I would rather see a business open with half the fees and provide jobs than to keep the double the fees and not have anybody in these businesses. I have a lot of vacant businesses up and down Highway 40, and I know these can be filled. They're doing it in Kingston. We have to sell ourselves to the people. One of the problems that we have, I think, is that we don't adequately market St. Mary's. This is a jewel, and we're not going to be a city that every business will want to come, but we need to sell ourselves to the businesses that meet our needs and make sure that they are treated right whenever they try to come in and get permits.
Mr. Jones? By the way, all of the questions for tonight's forum were compiled by our readers and others that emailed us. So if you did that and emailed or commented on Facebook on a page where I was monitoring, thank you very much. Those are very helpful in putting together these questions. this was probably the most popular request. The draft zoning ordinance has been the subject of much discussion, if not outrage, for many city residents. In fact, this issue may have even motivated some of the challengers to run. What is your opinion of this ordinance, and what type of zoning changes would you be willing to vote for if elected? I'm going to start Mr. Gant off on question number 2.
Well, the city council certainly understands that the proposed zoning ordinance caused a lot of concern, if that's to say it mildly. And it's now gone through the planning commission, and they've done their markup, and they've heard through the public, and now it's with the city council. And the city council, I will assure you, understands that there's a lot of concern out there about the zoning ordinance. And the city council is going to go about looking at this zoning ordinance piece by piece by piece. We're going to take our time. We're going to make sure that we hear from all the citizens. We think we've got a pretty good idea of what the main concerns are. It's how do you frame those concerns to minimize the concern, but still have some kind of standard. You just can't have a city anymore that doesn't have zoning standards. You've got to have standards, or your next door neighbor will ruin your house value maybe by not having any kind of compliance with cleanliness or cars parked or whatever. But it's such a fine line. Where do you draw the line? How do you do that? It's very difficult. But we understand that it's not going to happen quickly. We're not going to rush this through. We're going to study it, again, piece by piece by piece. We're going to continue to take input from the public, and we thank all those public people that have already inputted. We're going to take that into consideration. We're still doing that. I would not see this pass council this year, at least into next year, maybe even mid into later in the springtime, before we ever get through all the pieces. It's so complicated and so important to the city that we've got to get it right, and we will.
Thank you, Mr. Gann. Mr. Jones, question to you. The draft zoning ordinance, and what is your opinion? What type of zoning changes you'd be willing to vote for if elected?
Well, first thing I think we need to do is look at what we had before. The zoning ordinance that we had before were not being enforced. And I think that we need to prepare ourselves by looking at the effect that it's going to have on the citizens in St. Mary's, especially the ones downtown. I have a 89-year-old dad. Some of the things that they had in the ordinance would practically make him have to spend himself out of his house. Some of the things that they had in the ordinance were just, it was ludicrous, it was crazy. I think we need to just start from ground zero, go back to where we were, find out, we need law and order, we need rules and we need regulations. But to give you an example of what I'm talking about, and I hate to point fingers, but you know, our sign ordinance, we were told that, you know, we had to have signs in various places, they couldn't be on public property. And we thought sometimes that our signs were on the private property. Well, they weren't. A few of them weren't, and they were picked up by the code enforcement officer. That's his job. But again, there's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. Everybody is that putting signs and things out, we're law-abiding citizens. We try to do the right thing. If he had come to us or give us a call, everyone knows our numbers and says, Mr. Jones or Mr. Goodman or Mr. King, your sign is not where it's supposed to be. Within 15 minutes, it would be taken down. So we haven't been able to get to some of these points where we can treat people like they're human. You know, we're in the age where computers and machines talk to you and tell you things. We need to get back to the old basics. So if we can let our officials, or those that are responsible for maintaining some of the zoning, it would create a lot of harmony within the community. Mr. Goodman and I, we had a very, very nasty episode on this. So we want to make sure that we do the right things as citizens. But as citizens, we want to make sure that the law or the community is behind us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
I believe one difference in drafting new draft zoning orders and old zoning orders. Old zoning orders more restrictive than the new zoning orders. It just wasn't done properly in a lot of cases. I'm on the planning commission, and I went on the planning commission, I think in April. We had a couple of work sessions, went through it, and a lot of changes were made in the draft. I approved the draft along with everybody else. It went to, knowing it was going to the council, and the council was going to have public hearings on it. I was not going to be the final. I agree that we need a new zoning law. We need to be careful how we do it. And we need to make sure we'll never make everybody happy, no matter what we do. That's almost an impossibility. But we need to make the majority comfortable with the zoning law. People need to understand a zoning ordinance is controlling land uses and not storm drainage. That comes in other ways. And a lot of people will complain about storm drainage with the zoning ordinance draft. I think the latest draft that the planning commission passed was an improvement over what they had in April or in May. And I think it still needs some work, it needs some improvement, and I'm listening to the existing council work on it. And I have to commend what they did at the last work session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
Yes, he does hold that sign up, doesn't he? Sometimes it's not fast enough. You're doing good. Thank you so much. Great question. My problem with the planning and zoning is not so much the fact that we had to revise and modernize and reflect changes in society. It's the implementation of it. It's not Jim Goodman telling you this, but it's people you talk to telling you that when you go into the planning office, you are talked down to. You are disrespected. You are made to feel that you're an imposition on their busy workday. Folks, that's not right. I won't stand for that. I detest rudeness in people. And that's what's being reported. Not because I say so, but it's consistent. And I'm an old fireman, an old volunteer fire captain. When there's smoke, and a lot of it, there's fire. My problem also was that we started off with this political sign ordinance. Like Artie said, he and I had an incident, and let's be sure you understand, it wasn't between Artie and I, it was Artie and I facing the city's just absolute heavy-handed enforcement of that policy to the point that it was rude. It was behavior that was uncalled for. We challenged it. Artie throttled me back, and I appreciate it. I've told him that many times because I was chomping at the bit. And I don't like to do that. It's ungentlemanly. But I was upset because I have been treated very rudely. Now, I will tell you that today I got a very nice call. It's the second time this has happened from Code Enforcement Officer Sampson, as polite as he could be, informed me that somebody had put one of my signs on the median in Wheeler Street. I said, I'll streak down there and move that thing as quickly as I can. I did not sponsor that. And he said, I know you didn't. And that's the way it should be. Maybe we've turned that corner already. Maybe what we did and what we talked about that day at City Hall made an impact. And I would like to continue that, win, lose, or draw. You can be sure that what I'm going to do, you and your silly sign, I'm going to be going down there and challenging that kind of behavior every chance I get. And I can tell you that particularly if I were to be seated on the dais, even though one single councilman can't do something by himself, I can tell you that you can make enough noise to get attention. And that's what I would do, but it would always be with a great deal of civility and resoluteness. And I appreciate you listening to that. I have just popped off as much as I ever want to pop off in this dais in my life, but I was upset about that problem. Thank you.
Well, what I want to say first is our current ordinances that we have in place are old, patched, confusing, contradicting, and almost impossible to enforce because of all those problems. We have a new set of ordinances that we're very slowly reviewing, and there are parts of the new ordinance that are very good and actually more lenient and will make businesses coming in easier to deal with. And a lot less restrictions, but there are what I like to call the sticky wickets. We know we have those sticky wickets, and that's why we decided to try to handle some of those at the very beginning of our review. And those are mostly in Chapter 5 if anyone wants to take a look at them. But it has a lot to do with all the items that have created a lot of anger even before the final version or the current draft version even got to City Council for their review. So it is going to take work. It will take us probably more work sessions than we can imagine to get through the document. But I'm comfortable with the process we're taking. It's very slow, meticulous. We're asking lots of questions. The staff have to come back after we ask our questions with some suggested changes. And it's I think someone said up here, and I don't know which one of these brilliant men mentioned that, but we will be lucky if we finish this by the middle of next year, I think. It's going to be slow and deliberate. It's finding that balance, because most of what's in the ordinances came from a lot of feedback from citizens during the RSV process, the master plan process, through the surveys. All of the things that bothered and annoyed them were brought up, and as the ordinances were written, they were trying to address all of those issues. Unfortunately, writing a ordinance when you're trying to find the fine line between property right and rights of the neighbors is not an easy task. It's a very difficult task. But I'm comfortable with the process we're taking. I'm comfortable with the discussion that we're having. And I think eventually we are going to come up with an ordinance that is accepted by hopefully the majority of the people. There'll always be little things, and even after we pass it, we may say, well, that's not working the way we thought it would work, and we may have to go back and adjust it. But I hope that all of you who are concerned about them continue to stay involved. Down the line, when we're ready, there'll be plenty of public opportunity to give input again. And we'll get through this.
Let's talk a little bit about your priorities. Please explain 2 or 3 issues that you feel will be critical for the city in the coming term and how you plan to approach each of them. Mr. Payne, would you please start us off with this one? Please explain 2 or 3 issues that you feel will be critical for the city in the coming term and how you plan to approach each of them.
One of the issues is storm drainage. And the best way I can say, take care of that issue is we've got to be very careful, thoughtful, and study our drainage system, clean our ditches, and make sure we maintain them on a regular basis. In the past, the city had a policy, I don't know, it's been several years back, that they cleaned the ditches 1 every 5 years. That is not properly maintaining the ditches for drainage. Once the ditch starts going, it starts backing up water. And it needs to be done on a more regular basis. I'd say not more than once a year, but it'd probably be more often than that. The ditches should, and drainage ways should be cleaned daily. Another issue we got is what we just discussed on the zoning ordinance. And that's something we have to work with and we have to maintain. And we have to get it right. I hope I can be part of getting it right. Another issue is economic development. And we have to do something through our zoning and through incentives to try to bring more businesses and light industry into St. Mary's. I really believe what we've got going with the wharf is very promising, and it's something we need, and it's going to help. And it really will help St. Mary's, and I think it's a very positive move for St. Mary's. And that's one of the things I want to see is positive growth and positive move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Jones. Excuse me, Mr. Jones is next.
Thank you. Again, Mr. King and I, we're kind of on the same page. Drainage is a big problem here now, but I don't hold the present council responsible for a lot of things. We had a few storms in the past that has really caused problems with drainage. And anytime you get that much water pushing trash into these culverts, you're going to have some problems. One of the things that we need to do is we need to get rid of a few chiefs and put a little bit more Indians on the road. We don't have enough employees, city employees, to take care of our problems. We have grass growing and we can't keep up with it. I know that in the past that they've gotten rid of a few people, because they figured that they didn't need them. But now we need to bring these people back. We need to have a work crew where when we have a problem, you can address that problem. You don't have to wait 6 months or a year. Right now, the grass is growing too fast for the employees that we have. We have a lot of people that can ride around in vehicles and show the employees what the problem is, but the employees that are actually doing the work are not enough to keep up with it. One of the main things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to reduce taxes. We have a retirement community here. We have a lot of senior citizens living on fixed incomes. And they are barely getting along now with the present system. And maybe $400 or $500 a month is okay for some people, but when you have people that can't hardly make ends meet, $400 or $500 is a lot of money. And there are ways that we can reduce our tax structure so that we don't have to force our senior citizens and those living on fixed incomes into selling their homes because they can't afford it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jones. I'm gonna skip over to this other table here. Ms. Kowarski, would you like to answer that, please? 2 or 3 issues you feel will be critical for the city in the coming term?
Almost all the issues that have already been discussed are found and addressed in the master plan. So I'm sorry if you start to see me with master plan on my forehead. That's how my council feels. The council feels about me too. I sincerely believe that if we follow the plan that has been established and I'm going to, I can be a little bit on the nerdy side sometimes. So the other day I sat down and I listed the volunteers, the appointee volunteers that were involved in the master plan and the different tasks that we did. And without any exaggeration, being very lenient and not even addressing half of the tasks that we performed, I came up with almost 2,000 appointee hours dedicated to the development of this plan, free of charge to the city. We had extremely dedicated appointees who took the job very seriously. We had citizens who responded to our surveys, who came to work sessions, who actually took the time to be interviewed and express their ideas. So we've not, in that 2,000, it isn't even counting the other citizens that were involved in this process. So I am a strong advocate of the master plan because all of these issues are addressed and the tasks to solve the issues are listed in there. We need to proceed with the implementation. And the master plan gives us an opportunity to look at everything that needs to be done and spend our money more wisely. Without a master plan, the first project that comes along gets the funding. Well, 6 months later, you might have something that's 3 times as important, but the money's gone. So it is a tool that will help us move forward in a logical way that's to the benefit of all the citizens. And for that reason, and for the amount of time the citizens were involved in the development of this plan, I take it very seriously. And economic development, drainage problems, all of those items are discussed in it. So we have the tool, and it's a tool also that can be used to get grant money, because if you have something in that master plan, you are more likely to get federal and state aid to advance that master plan. They want to see that you're taking it seriously enough to have action steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kowarski. Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Joe. Elaine, thank you for buying these. This is a great notepad. The color is just absolutely wonderful. That's great. I'm sincere. And already thank you for sharing yours with me. Priorities, folks. Priorities. Wants versus needs. I see the city doing things that they want to do when needs are running over us. We're stomping on ants when elephants are out there. Man sitting on the second row, his house is in danger of flooding next tropical storm. The neighborhood is just chewing itself up with mosquitoes. I've been out there and I've looked at that, and so have the members of the council. I don't know what results are going to come from that, but I understand there's equipment available, and as was alluded to by Mr. Jones, not enough Indians to run that equipment. Those priorities need to be addressed, and we need to not be talking about buying property and doing things that are options when we have needs on the table and human beings are suffering and there are real health concerns. As a former health officer with the state of Florida, I can tell you Zika and West Nile virus are killers. They're real. And there's a neighborhood right down Crooked River Road. You do not want to be out there at night at dusk when those mosquitoes move in. Let's talk about endless studies. Do you know what an expert is? It's any guy or lady with a briefcase that's more than 50 miles from home. Let me suggest to you, with the nuclear facility that we have right down the road here, there's no shortage of brilliant men and women who would be willing to step up to the plate and offer advice and counsel free of charge, because it's going to save them. When you can take a tube made of steel and go underwater with it, and it's powered by a nuclear power plant, and you're taking care of missiles that have the ability to multiple times destroy the world, you're a pretty smart cookie. Man, woman, engineers, whatever, smart people. Even retired people from the paper mill. Every system you can think of was represented. Distribution systems, plumbing systems, infrastructure, everything's there. We don't need to pay outside consultants. Let's stop that nonsense. So we have the distilled wisdom of the ages, as I used to like to say about my nursing homes. That was something that was taught to me, and it's absolutely true. Why aren't you holding that sign up? Boy, I've got to be, oh, wait. The HOA restrictions. I'm picking at this guy. Thank you for what you're doing tonight, both of you. Appreciate it. The HOA type restrictions. A lady here in town who is a knowledgeable real estate agent has a piece of unimproved property, started off at a few $1,000s that she has to make improvements before she can market it. It's now $30,000. Don't want to use names in front of everyone, but I think I have the authority to give that. Was that me? Really? I'm sorry. Excuse me for running over time here.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Mr. Gant?
Well, I quickly noted three areas. Two of them has already been talked about, drainage, which is a big problem, and I'm going to talk to that. Economic development and taxes, I heard that. And I'm going to add another one, civility. I think that we're slipping back into the old days of non-civil discourse. And that's kind of a problem throughout the nation these days. I don't want to see it here in St. Mary's. When I first came on board as a councilman, they had a committee to lobby for civil discourse in all forums. And we really got better, got quite good. Initially, the council was at odds with one another. But over time, we got more and more civil, and we solved problems so much better when we weren't throwing barbs and arrows at one another, which we're starting to do not so much on the council, but within the community. And Facebook is a terrible, terrible disease, I think, but yeah, I don't recommend Facebook to anybody, particularly. I certainly don't go there. But anyway, civility. The drainage. Drainage has been a huge problem for St. Mary's since it was founded. I mean, it was founded on a marsh, probably, with a little sand out there somewhere, where a boat put in, they struck a flag in the ground and said, this is it. In 2008, a study was done that showed that there was $7 million worth of unfunded drainage work that needed to be done here in St. Mary's. That $7 million today may be double, I don't know, but it's a lot of money, much more money than we can take out of our general fund. We have to come up with a more unique way, a more uniform way of addressing that shortfall. And it's enormous, but we got to do it. Sea level rise is a fact. We're going to have storm surges here. It's going to cause property damage. We've got to have a tool, and that tool is an enterprise fund. It's been initiated throughout Georgia very successfully. I think the latest one to go through the study was Brunswick, and I understand they did a very good job. The council is moving in that direction to bring on another consultant, because that's the way you have to do it in order to make it work. But it'll involve a lot of people discussing what should be as far as corrections to the stormwater system, improvements to the stormwater system, etc. Economic development. I heard economic development and taxes. Well, St. Mary's has the lowest tax rate in the county. Even with the rise that we just had, went to 6.5 mils. The Kingsland Mills Stop. It's 82.2. So I got 8.2. So I'll follow up on that later.
Thank you, Mr. Gann. The recent embezzlement scandal at the Camden County Public Service Authority, which oversees recreation, cost St. Mary's taxpayers hundreds of thousands of additional dollars last fiscal year. The PSA's funding agreement with local governments is expired and has been for some time, and it has been at least 10 years since the last independent financial audit. Although the St. Mary's mayor is a voting member of this authority, do you think the city council members should be doing more to influence the PSA's future course? And Mr. Goodman, we're going to start you off on that question.
Are you sure, Jill? Thank you. The strategy for that arrangement was convoluted to begin with. It's not kind of not surprising that it was allowed to slip into a state of functioning on its own without adequate supervision. But I can tell you, at any point in my career, either in Ely hospitals or corporate hospitals, if I had, as the chief administrator, allowed that kind of thing to develop within the business of that hospital, I would be gone. And I'm just frankly surprised that in all of the awards that were given in each of the governments, you see them congratulating themselves on their fiscal responsibility. Nobody thought about the audit for that kind of budget. There's a lot of money out there, and it begs the question, what else is out there? What else is it that we don't know? And now we have the advent of unanswered requests for information that are hanging out there, and the stale date is long past on. Why aren't we getting that information? We paid for that. We should know where that money went. What's the future strategy? I think it depends on finding the weaknesses and getting the management letter from an audit and determining what's the best course of action and the strategy to make it fair for each community to pay its own way. I think that a lot of these things should be user-driven. As a senior citizen, I'm likely not going to be out there playing softball, and I don't have children who are going to be doing that. So I'm going to be selfish about it and say that whole strategy needs to be looked at. I will say this, recreation is a vital part of a community. It was said one time in a government that I was peripherally involved in that you either recreate or you incarcerate. And I think that's absolutely true, but the funding mechanism needs to be completely revised, and it needs to be done so in full disclosure with what has gone on in the past with those budgets and funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Ms. Pelosi, any question?
I think anyone who follows city council knows that I have been very vocal about this issue and my concern about this issue. It's tragic, but we all know if there's money involved, there's always a risk that somebody's going to try to find a way to get some of that money. But we have learned a hard lesson. We need to move forward. I know there's been quite a few meetings by the PSA board. You have to remember that the PSA stands for Public Service Authority. They are ruled by state laws, and they are expected to follow their articles of incorporation. I'm not sure how much flexibility they have in changing the structure of the board, but I know there are things that could be done that would improve the transparency and that would improve the oversight. And my understanding is that the PSA board has expressed a willingness to work and meet with the cities. And I'm hoping those discussions will also involve how can we do better oversight, how can we better manage this. I would like to see, if you can't change the structure, which may be possible that the structure cannot be changed. I know it's hard when you put 3 mayors and 2 county commissioners who are already busy with their entities to try to oversee another function. but there are ways to find input allow the citizens to have some input, whether it be to form some committees like a finance committee and an activities committee, where they would be another layer that would have more time to pay attention. That will be one of my recommendations when it comes time for the PSA board to meet with the city. So I hope that happens in the near future. I'm sure if that does happen, there'll be a lot of good suggestions that come up and we can find solutions. We have to move forward. PSA is a good asset to this community. We need to get it back on track.
Well, I certainly agree with Elaine. I'm very disappointed in the PSA. Obviously, nothing was very well managed, either financially. The idea that they hadn't had an audit in years, and it's an authority, it's hard to believe. But I believe the people that actually, the mayors and the county commissioners, they should have paid more attention, but they probably should have had more financial standards in place. They should have had better management. I thought the county was doing that. I think the mayors and probably commissioners thought so too. And it turned out that they didn't have the management and financial requirements in place. At least audits. I mean, it's unbelievable an authority doesn't have an annual audit. I don't know how long it was before they had since they have an audit, but I think it was a long time. I think they need to have more open meetings and open records. And I think that's important in the future so that the public can see through exactly what they're doing and how they're spending money and how they're accounting for that money.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Mr. Jones?
Okay. The PSA was part of my baby when I was county commissioner. I started recreation back in 1979 with a director, and his whole budget was like $94,000 a year. That was his salary and everything else. Today, we have things a little bit differently. I think Councilman Williams, she was on the board when we were putting the PSA together. It's a great organization, and it's still viable. You said that, you don't, Mr. Goodman, you said that you don't think that you'll be going out there playing softball or football or whatever, but they do have Off Your Rocker. We have 90-some senior citizens that have an exercise class early in the morning, so it's for everybody. We have swimming pools. And this old back there have a spin class for somebody that's willing to try. It's a simple matter of watching the purse string. We have to just admit it. The 3 mayors and 2 county commissioners dropped the ball. We had a recreation director that they thought was doing a fantastic job, and they never questioned it. They dropped the ball. All they had to do was have audits. It didn't have to be yearly audits. It could be an audit every 2 or 3 years. But as long as, if anybody that's over that kind of money, after 4 or 5 years, he finds out nobody's watching him, he's going to do some things. So we need to get back to what we are about as government. We need to watch the purse string, because I don't know how we're going to pay our way out of this, but once we get it back on track, we'll know what we have to do from now on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. King?
I'll beat you back on
Yeah, it's on. I want the sign to pop up there. That was a bad thing. It's a shame. I'm not complaining anybody, but the board should have been watching. director should have been taking care of it. They should have had an annual audit on the PSA. And that's what needs to be done in the future when they get all this straight. It's cost the county and the 3 cities a lot of extra money that shouldn't have been. And that has to be watched. If it's not, it can happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. All right. This was also another popular question among our readers. How should St. Mary's City Council balance its resources so that all parts of the city receive equal benefit for their tax dollars? Does the economic benefit of spending money on projects in downtown St. Mary's provide an adequate return on investment for all citizens? And we want to start with Mr. Gant.
Well, I love our downtown, I love our waterfront, I love our park, I love what it could even be better. It will be better after we finish the reconstruction of St. Mary's Street. It will be better after we have good paying development on the Intercoastal Gateway. And why do we spend so much money down there? It's because that's our jewel. That's what brings people here. That's what brings people into the city. They want to stay here after they've been downtown. They've been through the historic district. It just grows on you. You drive down there and you say, this is heaven. It's going to be more heaven when we're done with it. But I'm telling you, the downtown is the moneymaker for the city. Now, that doesn't mean that we ignore the rest of the city, because we certainly don't, and we won't. But we provide the same services to all the city, whether it be fire or police or public works or whatever. It's all the same throughout. So I reject the fact that we're not spreading the wealth, so to speak. We are putting a little more wealth into the downtown because of what it can bring to us in economic growth. And that's so important. You know, if we don't broaden our tax base, right now our tax base is so centered on each homeowner. We need businesses that we can spread that tax base off to, businesses and light industry, and what attracts them is what they see when they come downtown. That's my feeling anyway. That's one of the reasons we stayed here. Plus, we stayed here because we just love people. Everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Gant. Mr. King, how should the city balance its resources?
Good question. Really good sign up there. I think the city should spend equal time throughout the city, maintain the ground and not. I live in the downtown area, and I love the downtown area. I've got a beautiful lot, I've got a beautiful view. One of the best views in the city. I can look out at the Atlantic Ocean. I look at all the hills in Fernandina. Look at Fort Clint. But I love my place, but I also love the whole city. Just because I'm in the downtown area, that doesn't mean the city should be doing more maintenance in Kirkgrove Plantation, and Sugar Mill, and Winding River, Osprey Cove, and what have you. We need to work on all areas equally. We need, I believe, agree with beautifying downtown and helping to help bring more businesses downtown. And when we get to water, I think that's going to be an important part of downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Jones.
Somewhere around 1986 to 1989, the city leaders decided that they wanted to annexed where I lived. I was born and raised downtown St. Mary's on Hall Street, about two blocks from City Hall. And after I got married, I moved to a place called Woodsville. A lot of the newcomers don't know where that is, but that's just across the river. And we were fine out there. We were right out of the city limits. I had my target area back there where me and my sons, we shoot, and we did a lot of things that we couldn't do in the city. They decided that they wanted to annex us into the city, which they did. We protested, we fought, but they put us in the city anyway. I went back out there a few weeks ago. They still don't have sewer. They have water, but they don't have sewer. The ditches and things are not being maintained like they're supposed to. So, you know, there is no equity as far as tax dollars are concerned. And this is all over the city. You know, I think that we should do some special things for downtown. But 15, 20 years after they've been paying this kind of taxes, my God, the least they could have is sewer. So we're going to have to look at not just downtown, but we're going to have to look at the entire city.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Forrest?
There are needs all over the city that we have not been able to meet for a number of reasons. We are in a very low-lying area. Some of our areas within the city have design and drainage design issues because they were built so long ago that the codes have changed since this time. But you're dealing with a lot of old designs that cause more problems. Actually, when it comes to public works, probably a greater amount of time is spent in the areas that are older because of the fact that they have more immediate needs. When, in 2008, when we had the decline in the economy, we cut back on staff a lot. We as a city, I was not on council at that time, but in order to maintain and keep the taxes where they were, in spite of the tax digest diving and property values going way down, they chose to lay off a lot of staff. Since that time, the economy has been coming back, and we are hoping that we will see it continue to do that. But the city did not add the staff back that they had. We're far from the levels we were at in 2008 yet. We just did have a tax increase in order to add another public works crew. When it comes to fire and police and all the other services that a city renders, I believe everyone is getting at least the reasonable amount that they expect. However, I know that the issues relating to public works, the old infrastructure, and of course the areas with the oldest infrastructure are going to get more resources because their needs, their immediate needs are more consuming of time versus the brand new areas that have modern drainage systems that require less attention. So it is a fine line. It is somewhat because we've had shortages in the staffing that we used to have, but we are trying to work towards resolving those issues.
Thank you, Ms. Kowarski. Mr. Goodwin?
Aren't we back to wants versus needs? It's kind of a self-licking ice cream cone that's circuitous. We come back to looking at what's been spent downtown, and then we look at the areas that, I don't want to beat this to death, but it's very important. We have a whole group of people who are suffering. I don't hear them actually getting as angry as I think they should get. Up until recently when Rob Moore and Kevin and some other people in that neighborhood began, you know, the bane of Facebook and publicizing this. You didn't hear a whole lot about it, but the need is real. And I don't hear them being unreasonable about asking for a return on their tax money that they give, you know, to the city. Now, as far as fire service, I think Ms. Powersky is correct. It is equitable, but I would suggest to you that it's because of the ISO, the Insurance Service Organization, that requires that you develop uniform standards across the community, and that you don't have this area of town that has, you know, a Class 1 rating and another area that has a Class 5 rating. You kind of bring it all up at the same time, and I think that approach should be given uniformly across the board. We should stop all purchasing of anything that's not an absolute necessity until we have addressed needs. I'll give you a case in point. We spent over $30,000 on the beautification of St. Mary's Road. Now, up until a week or so ago, when they got in between the guardrails, right with the interchange of you know, the exit 1 that you come off and you go to Highway 40, those palm trees, the weeds were half as high as the palm trees. The center section is still that way. The 2 end sections have been addressed. 1 minute, thank you. They took an area that was easy to cut with belly mowers and tractor mowers and made a very complicated process out of it. It's labor intensive now, and they don't maintain it. 25% of the trees were dead on arrival. 3 of them are still dead. A couple of them have been replaced, as I understand it, wants versus needs. Let's get it straight.
All right, we probably have time for maybe one more question before we go into our conclusions, and then we will probably finish up a few minutes. I can tell you, I've got several questions, and it's hard picking, but
It's an easy.
all right. Let's get going. St. Mary's City Council has more than 15 appointed committees and boards. Do you favor the use of citizens in these roles, and do you think that they, as unelected officials, have an appropriate level of influence over city policy? Are they performing to expectations, and what, if any, changes should be made? We're going to go right down the road, starting with Artie on Mr. Jones.
Would you?
Repeat the question.
Yes.
The city has more than 14 appointed committees and boards. Do you favor the use of citizens in these roles, and do you think that they, as unelected officials, have an appropriate level of influence over city policy? Are they performing to expectations, and what, if any, changes should be made?
Well, I think that the boards and things that we have are great. I think that the citizens need to probably apply for more of these boards, especially if they want to see some changes. I don't think that they have a whole lot of influence. I think that they're just looking at policy and giving it to the city leaders, and they're the ones that are going to say yay or nay. But these boards are definitely needed, but we need to put people on these boards that's going to think about what's going to be the best for St. Mary's. And when I say the best for St. Mary's, I'm talking about all of St. Mary's, not just the downtown area or some of the other areas that are making a lot of noise. They would say that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and that's why downtown is getting a whole lot of attention. But we have other areas that have problems too. But as far as the boards and things, I think it's a great thing.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. King?
I believe the boards and committees the city has is very good. It helps keep the citizens part of the city. It makes them feel like they've got a need. I believe the city council does take honest opinion of what the boards and committees recommend. I think they're needed, they're good. A lot of people, a lot of citizens, they need to apply more to get on these different committees. I think they'll benefit the city. I think they benefit the people that on these committees, help them feel like they're more part of the city.
Mr. Goodman?
Thank you. I don't know why I had so much trouble with that chair. I probably need to go to that rocking and rolling group with you. Marty? Darn it, off your rocker. Is that a mental health thing or health boards? Thank you. Boards. My criticism of the boards is there's too much redundancy. Too many people are on several boards. And it kind of, it's like an inbreeding situation. That's a very rude word to use, but that's the best one I can come up with. The problem with that is that there's too much influence centered on too few people. I think also the council has been very, very willing to let the boards go without too much of their oversight and input. Very few times when I sat on the Historical Preservation Board was I looking at a city council member in the audience. And sitting on that board, I can tell you for a fact that there was a disparagence in treatment of certain people who came in. And that troubled me greatly, and I resigned from that board because of the difficulties that I had with that concept. So yeah, that's a real criticism, and you can't tell me it didn't happen because I did live it. I was right there. So I think there should be term limits. I think there should be a greater recruiting effort to get more cross-representation in the community. I think if someone is willing to come to those meetings when they're not a board member and sit in those meetings and study that board function, that at a certain period of time they should be invited to join because of their interest and their input, providing that they're sincere about that and that they behave themselves, because that indicates the true spirit of being interested in those boards and following up with it. So I think the boards are, on balance, a good thing. I think it's the administration on the part of the council. There's too much free hand in that. That also, and I'm going to extend the question just slightly, extends to the city manager. I think that the council depends too heavily on the whims and the administration invested in one person in this city. I'm very serious about that. I have a great deal of heartburn. We've not even mentioned the senior citizen group. That was not the chime, was it? I heard something. Thank you. The senior citizens are not being given respect. Nobody's asking what's going on with the senior citizens. There's a lot of issues with that, and that's very near and dear to my heart. So I would like to see the boards and also that authority. All of those things need to be looked at very closely and very critically. And I'm going to give you a little bit of time back. Thank you.
Ms. Morrison?
Well, this question is one that I could sit and talk about for an hour or more. During the first year and a half of my time on city council, I actually did a study of every board and authority, all 11 of them, and that report to the city of St. Mary's. It was very time consuming. It was a learning lesson. After that, I developed a list of recommendations to city council on what I thought could be improved in the process. We have changed some things. You talked about term limits. That was one of the recommendations. And we didn't, this may surprise you, but we don't always agree on everything. And that was one of the things that I couldn't get a lot of support for. Actually, when I did a lot of research, the theory was that city council should be controlling the length of stay. as they appoint, and that there should be no reason for term limits, and term limits were the easy way out. Unfortunately, we do not get enough volunteers, but the roles of the boards and authorities are extremely important. There are three components of city government. You have your employees, you have your elected officials, and you have your citizen boards and authorities. And I like to think of them as more than a volunteer. I like to address them as appointees because they are literally appointed to represent the city in what they are assigned to do. Those are very important roles. We need to work more together to get everyone out of their little silos and on the same page. And I know you're tired of hearing about the master plan, but the master plan is a good tool to try to pull that together. In fact, I just met with the DDA, and there's a meeting this Wednesday with DAS, I'm sorry for all the acronyms, the Development Authority and the Downtown Development Authority, to go over some of the tasks in the master plan to see which ones they're willing to start working on, because there's a lot of things that could be done by those appointees. And I'm hoping over time, and I want those positions to be satisfying to the individuals who are in them. It is very important that if they're going to offer their time, that we give them meaningful and productive work to do. And it takes work. We're slowly moving there. It's improving, but it'll take more time. I'll give me something to do. If you are willing to have me there, I'll continue to work on that effort for the next 4 years.
Thank you.
Well, boards and authorities are very important to the management of the city. We couldn't do it without the boards and authorities. It's an incubator for coming up into leadership and other management positions. Our problem is we can't fill all the positions. We'd love to be able to fill the positions. I think that if we gave maybe more power, I don't know if that's the right word, but more responsibilities to some of the boards, they would take over and do more. But again, I'll go back to, I don't know how you would run the city without boards and authorities. And by the way, they make a lot of decisions at the board and authority level. It never comes up to council. If everything came up to council, we would be in bad shape. So I'm a big supporter on it. I would ask that any of you out there who would like to serve on board and authority, there's plenty of vacancies out there. And so step up to the plate and join the crew because we need you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, give the candidates a round of applause. Go through one more time and just add a closing statement. If there's anything important that we didn't cover tonight, feel free to include those in those statements. And I don't know about the audience, but I have a lot of more questions, so they're going to stick around after this event, and I encourage you to go talk to the candidates directly and ask them what's on your mind, okay? Mr. Gant, would you like to start us off on these closing remarks?
I don't think I've ever read closing remark before, but I'm going to read this closing remark. It is unfortunate my opponent declines to participate in events like this. Just because there is an empty seat here, do not think I am running unopposed. I have an opponent who rejects public debate and is only willing to discuss his platform in a controlled setting where his mischaracterization of facts cannot be challenged. While that is his right, do not let it leave you with the impression that I am running unopposed. Please vote. Vote absentee ballot or early vote in Woodbine this week or in St. Mary's next week at Salvation Army. Or vote on election day at your appointed precinct. I am prepared to continue serving the public interest. My platform is simple. Increase our economic health and vibrancy. Maintain our small town ambience. Recognize and respect all citizen views. One St. Mary's, one St. Mary's. I respectfully request and appreciate you. Thank you.
I want to say that there is no one person who can make major changes. you need to work as a team. It takes all 6 of us on city council to make progress and to move forward. And part of the role of the council person is to do their homework on every issue, talk to citizens and get the feelings of the citizens, develop what you feel are good approaches, and then sit down at the table and listen and give an opportunity to the others on council to give their opinions. The best decisions are made when we can go to the table with an open mind, not preconceived ideas on how we're going to solve the problem, and allow everyone to have their say, but listen. It's so easy sometimes for folks to sit back and be developing their response to what somebody says rather than just taking the time to listen, because that is when you actually can get the very best decision, because 6 heads working together are much better than 1. Nobody, I'm sorry, there is nobody who is right all the time, and there is nobody who always has the best decision. So I want you to think about the fact that you are selecting you're selecting 3 candidates, but you're also selecting a team to move the city forward. I pride myself on being an independent thinker, and sometimes I might be the only one who thinks that way, and I'm outvoted. That's life. That's what happens on city council. Other times, I try to persuade my fellow council members to see my point of view. It's being a council member takes listening, discussing, and having an open mind, and moving the city forward to try to find the best decision that's possible for the most citizens in the community. I am willing to give my time and energy and persistence on these issues that we've addressed tonight. I'm hoping that I will have your vote, because when I decided to run because I want to have the position again for 4 more years. So hopefully I'll have your vote. And everyone, please, whoever you're voting for, get out and vote. And thank you so much.
Mr. Gooden.
I want to thank everybody at this dais tonight, and I'm impassioned. I'm not uncivil. I want to make that distinction, because there's no animosity in my heart for anyone in this room, particularly anyone at this table. And I want to bring to you what I think are my strengths. Believe it or not, consensus building has been most often mentioned in my performance evaluations in a number of different jobs that I've held in some very difficult positions in response to challenging issues. For a period of time, my job in healthcare administration was that of appointed administrator by the Judge Advocate General and the Office of Inspector General to go in different facilities, governmental installations, and put them back into compliance. And you have to do that with the existing staff, particularly in rural areas. And so one of the things that you do is to say to everyone in that group, we're going to start on an even ground here, and you need to make a decision. You're either part of the problem or part of the solution. If you're part of the problem, you won't last long here. But if you want to be part of the solution, the door is open. I'm going to listen to what you have to contribute. And everybody is on equal footing in that regard. As I would approach the task and the monumental task of consensus building within the council, I would say that one person can make a difference. You can state your truth quietly and give the reasons and persuade and do whatever you can in terms of being a persuasive entity on that council to bring that fiscal responsibility, accountability, and common sense to the administration of city government in St. Mary's, Georgia. I'd like to have that opportunity to do that. I promise that I will listen to everyone. I'll be extremely visible and extremely available. And I think I've been given my 1 minute for the last time tonight, and you've done a tremendous job. Thank you for doing that. And thank you, audience, for listening very patiently to us.
I just want to be sure I got this thing on. I have trouble with it all the time. All I can say is, I believe in the city of St. Mary's. I believe the city is moving in a positive, forward fashion. I believe it takes, like Elaine said, teamwork. I'm individual thinking. And I think that's important to be on the council. My alliance is with the citizens of St. Mary's and the city of St. Mary's, and not with any individual person. I am not a yes man and never will be a yes man. Quick to say no, but I will say yes. I think St. Mary's has got a lot to do. I think I can be a team player. I want to be a team player with everybody that's on the council. I will not make any individual promise or I'll do anything accomplished other than I will listen to you, I will be responsible, and I will be dependable. That's the only promise I can make. There's 5 other people on the council who have to vote. Maybe I can sway them on some, maybe not. I know I will not always agree with everything everybody wants on the council. And I appreciate y'all coming here tonight. I thank you. Here it goes again. He loves me. Thank you.
Again, Jill, thank you for doing a great job and a great service. I'd like to say, first of all, that I don't have all the answers. I don't do everything right all the time. But I do listen, I do my research, and I pray before I make any major decision. I can work with anyone. And when I say anyone, I mean anyone. I have love for everybody, and there's nobody in St. Mary's that I know of that I don't have a genuine love for. I love this city, and I promise if I'm elected, I'll serve you with dignity and respect. This position requires someone that can work on every line with anybody from all walks of life. The newcomers, the ones that's been here for as long as I have and longer, I have respect and I have enough love that I can make any one of those happy. We're not going to do everything that's right, and I agree that one person can make a change. One person can make a drastic change. I would ask that if you want to see St. Mary's continue to move forward and to maintain the small town love and atmosphere we have, I'd ask you to vote for me. And besides, I think St. Mary's need a little color.
So I just want to say one more thank you to Bryson Morrison and Chad Carter, our timers for tonight. I hope you realize it's all in good fun. We love to have young people involved in this event tonight, so thank you very much for coming. So that concludes our question and answer portion of the program tonight. Like I said, feel free to stick around and talk to the candidates. Have a safe trip home. Thank you so much.
We can put it on the desk, but it'll get it.
And now